Well, hello, my name is David Wiegand, and I just wanted to introduce myself. Now that the channel is starting to get some more subscribers again, after I kind of abandoned it a while ago, just life happened, and those of you that are coming back, welcome back. Those of you that are new, welcome. Who am I? What do I do? All the things that you're probably wondering. Well, I am first and foremost a DJ. As you probably know from just listening to some of the stuff that I do. I specialize in trance. I started as a house DJ back in the early 90s. And then as soon as trance started coming about, I kind of jumped on that. Early with the kind of the melodic techno side, layering in some ambient tracks in over the top of it, and then just kind of building from there into what it is now. I know that was very vague, but I feel like talking about music genres for any length of time requires its own separate video. This is more about the history of me. I started DJing back in 91, late 91, really getting going in 92. Playing house parties and train wrecking all over the place because I started with vinyl like you did back in the days. And then eventually I figured it out and even learned what keys are and all the stuff that makes you a much better DJ. Mostly being able to read the room was probably the thing that made me the best. After a while, some promoters took notice, gave me a shot on some stages at some very low-key festivals, like 500 people type festivals. Bigger than a club, but only by maybe a matter of 50 to 100 people. And it was outside. So that was fun. I enjoyed doing those, Phoenix Festival and a few of the others that were out there at the time. And then as the later part of the 90s came along, started getting notice from some record labels, specifically Moonshine Music. They wanted to know if I was interested in making some of my own stuff, and of course I was. It was awful. Nothing that I would ever even claim that I did. I'm not even going to say the titles of the name. If you know who they are or know the names of the tracks and the aliases that I used, great. But I would like to leave those in the past. Speaking of my music productions, I have 3 major projects, aliases, whatever you want to call them. The main one, David Wiegand, me, that's gonna just be an all-around trance, techno, house, basically just whatever I'm gonna play that day or produce or whatever, that's gonna be it. And then there's Deep Space, which is the lower tempo, usually 130 and below, and that will be kind of the progressive, a lot more melodic, longer tracks. I think the shortest Deep Space track is somewhere around 10 minutes, maybe. I think I have one 8-minute one. Yeah. And that's gonna be also kind of the extended remix type of thing. A good example of that was actually the very first one all the way back on my first artist album, My World. I then wanted to remix a couple of the tracks that were going to be the singles, but I didn't have a whole lot of contacts in the industry yet to reach out to other folks to see if they wanted to do some remixes for me, with me, however. So I just had to come up with my own remix, and so for, oh gosh, what song was it? I can't remember the name right now. You would think somebody that has the memory that I do, I would be able to remember my own stuff better, but I can't. I'll just put it on the screen, the title of the song that I'm thinking of. But from that album, I did the remix for it. The original was around 9 minutes. The remix ended up being like 12 minutes. And it was a much more aggressive and long drawn out track. Actually became quite popular in my higher BPM sets back in the day. And then later on, I started incorporating a little bit of the deep space sound into the David Wiegand project with the second album, the Future Retro EP. And that one went pretty well. And then the third album, which was almost exclusively deep space, even though it was still my stuff, it was all remixes, but deep space remixes. And that was the Future Retro EP remix album. That actually just came out last year. And then the third project that I do is actually with Tyler Hollenbeek, who is the lead guitarist and singer for the band Sack of Cats. I'll put a link in the description below. They're a great band. And we do a project together called G.E.R.M, G.E.R.M with periods. That stands for Gravitational Error Revival Music. And Gravitational Error was the first attempt we had at doing a project together over 20 years ago. And then like 22 years later, we finally sat down and decided, okay, we're carving out some time, and we put out a 2-track EP. And it was pretty well received. The Smoke, Strobes, and Robes song that you've heard, and then the one that everybody calls the Gong Song, but it's actually called An Evening with the Anunnaki. Yeah, that's a whole other discussion how I know that name. That's a bit of the history of me, the Future Retro podcast. That's where I try stuff out. Either some tracks that are new and I want to try them out, mixing them and playing with them, see how they fit in sets before I take them out on the road, or it is also where I will try out demo versions of songs that I'm working on. I make the music back here, record the podcast over there, and that's pretty much it for the extent of the studio. I don't use high dollar stuff. I buy stuff at pawn shops. I use old stuff. I use it till it stops working. Just as an example, those 15s that I use as studio monitors down there, the tweeters are still original, but the woofers got changed out. I bought the whole cabinet and everything at a Radio Shack going out of business sale way back in the mid 90s, when they still allowed like franchise stores, like mom and pop stores that also were Radio Shacks. It's a weird time. But one of those franchise stores was going out of business, and I bought those. It's $100 for the pair. I couldn't believe it. Well, the speakers themselves kind of sucked. But I used them for a while, and then a few years later, I learned a little bit about soldering and some stuff like that, and I changed out the woofers in there with some nice JBL subs, and put a nice little crossover on the inside, and then got a nice amp to run the whole thing as my chair keeps turning around. And yeah, I use them as studio monitors. They're not the highest fidelity thing out there, but they give me a pretty good representation when I crank up the volume, especially with the subwoofer that I have in here. Gives me a pretty good idea of what they would sound like in a average club system. Still not the best, but it does the trick. And then over here is where I record the Future Retro podcast. And as you can see, I still do it pretty old school. I use vinyl, and then I also have old school CDJs. There's not even USB in those. I either have to burn to CD if I want to play it, or I import it into Rekordbox, and then I use timecode discs and play it that way. That's usually how I do it. But I do have thousands and thousands and thousands of CDs. I've done videos about my music collection. I'll link those below as well. Quite a bit of physical stuff. My wall of records, I've got that over behind the camera here. Yeah, I like to keep it kind of old school, low budget, very attainable, meaning that anything that I'm doing, anybody who has a credit card and has some pawn shops near them can probably buy everything that I use for a reasonable amount. And I like to do that because it feels more real that way, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when you listen to a lot of these radio shows by other DJs, they're very highly produced and a lot of splash coming at you, all the, all those kinds of things. Live from Amsterdam, all those kinds of things. Yeah, I just don't need to do that. I like no talking, just music, and if there's a small flub in the mix, I just leave it in. It's live. Live music is always the best. Pre-recorded is garbage. You can go buy pre-recorded at Walmart. Why would you do that? Yeah, that's all. I think that's a whole other video about DJs and pre-recorded sets. If you'd like me to get into that, put a comment down below. I'll share my opinions on them. There's going to be some people that won't like what I have to say about it. That said, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing a lot of prep work before a set, meaning take your time, learn your music, maybe make a special edit, those kinds of things. But a special edit should not be 60 minutes. It should be 5. And that special edit should just be if you wanted to do a mashup that might be just a little bit outside of your skill set to be able to do it live. I think we can all accept those because you're still mixing from song to song, even if your mashup is one of the songs you're mixing in and out of. That's fine. I'll allow that. I won't even give anybody any crap for that. But if you play 60 minutes of just, and then you're dancing on stage, yikes. that's all I'm going to say about that for now. If you'd like me to elaborate more, again, please comment below and I'll get into it. I don't publish track lists either. If you ask me, I'll tell you what record I just played. But if you're looking for me to post my track list, I'm not going to do it. The reason being is just like back in the day when you would get handed a cassette and you may not even know which DJ recorded this one because the Sharpie wore off or you can't read the handwriting. You know, you didn't have talking, you didn't have radio production, the audio quality may not have been the best. Well, I try and do the better audio quality. But yeah, I still try and do the Future Retro podcast just like an old school rave mixtape. Just with music that might have been produced this year, or last week, this morning. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop rambling now. I think you have a pretty good idea of who I am, what I'm about, a little bit of my history. If you'd like to know more about maybe some specific residencies that I've held or festivals that I've played, I'm more than happy to talk about those. Just ask in the comments below. If you are a longtime viewer, you know that I try and get to all the comments. Unless you're just a jerk about it, then I'm just going to ignore you. But if you ask a good question, or even a strange question, I'm still going to try and answer it, at least to the best I can. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next one.